Hi there. In this Microsoft Office Excel video, we'll take a look at how we can use Excel. This is a very first introduction to Excel. So I'm going to open up Excel. I'm running Office 365 on Windows 7. It looks slightly different on Windows 10. So you may see some discrepancies if you're using Windows 10, but aside from that, all of the functionality is the same all the way back to 1997, effectively. So when I open up Excel, I'm at this home screen in something called the Backstage view. It gives me a list of my recent documents, and then there's some little tutorials up at the top here. If you have full screen, you'll have additional templates that are available. So we have preset spreadsheets that are commonly used. I'm going to create a brand new blank workbook. Workbook is the name of the Excel document. And we're presently looking at a workbook with one worksheet. I'll get into multiple worksheets in future videos. But what we presently have here is an arrangement of columns. The columns have letter names and rows. The rows have number names, and then cells, which is the intersection of a row and a column. And if I click on a cell up here in this area, this is called a name box. So the default name for that cell is A1. If I click on, for example, H14, intersection of column H and 14, the name is H14. And you can type in any cell that you like. So if I want to go to CC225 or something like that, now I'm at CC225. So the rows will go up to 26, to Z, and then they'll restart. So if I look at back here, so once we get up to Z, we get a AA, and then an AB, AC, and it continues on until we can see our very last row and our very last column by going Control down arrow. That brings me down to row 1,048,576, so we can have basically 1,000,000 records, which is the name for a row in a tabular layout. And if I go Control right arrow, it brings me up to XFD, so whatever that is. I'd have to do a Google search to find out how many columns I get. So Control arrow will bring you to the very last cell of your content. If you hit it again, it'll bring you to the very last cell of your spreadsheet. If you want to go home, you can go Control Home or type A1 in the name box. I'll do both. I'll go Control Home. Notice A1 pops in the A box, or if I go Control right arrow, Control down arrow, and if I type in A1, you can just use lowercase. Excel knows what you mean. I'll press A1, press enter, and I go to A1. So there's other ways we can navigate through this spreadsheet. If I use my arrows on my keyboard, that's my right arrow, of course, my left arrow, and my down arrow, and my up arrow. We can also use tab, or shift tab will bring you back. You can also use enter. Enter is dynamic to your content. We'll see how that works in a bit. So I'm going to quickly add some content to this. So I'm going to click on A1 or use my arrow to get to A1, and I'm going to type in first quarter sales. And I'll hit tab to finish that off. Notice if I click back on that cell up here in the formula bar, that's what this is called, it displays the text there. So I can, if I need to modify this, if I want to change it to first quarter sales instead of first quarter sales, for example, I can double click in that cell to modify the text, or I can change it here and then tab. And if you click on that cell, so right now it looks like there's content in B1. So it's not actually in B1. I can tell by the formula bar that there's no content in B1. So sometimes you have to look at the formula bar to see where the content is in your actual spreadsheet. So I've got first quarter sales. I'm going to leave this cell blank, and I'm going to move to this cell and I'll type in January. Now, we have, if I just hit tab to finish this off, we have something called autofill, which will basically fill the next cell with the next logical value when I drag the autofill handle, and that's that tiny little square at the bottom right corner. So if I mouse over it, notice that my cursor is presently a big white plus sign. The cursor is dynamic to where your pointer is in relation to various items within Excel. So if I put it right on top of that square there, I get a little black plus sign. That's the autofill tool. So if I drag this to the right, I'll drag once. Notice I have to get halfway through the cell before it pops in, and it says it's going to be February. I keep dragging, and it says it's going to be March. When I let go of the mouse, those values pop in. And we can do that for a lot of different things, which we'll see. And I'll type in totals, which is where I'll add a formula to add up all of my values. And I'm going to type in Steve Albini, Dave Weston. So now I'm just hitting enter to finish off that value. Butch Vig and Garth. One more. So just a bit of content there. So right now this content is going, it's spilling out of this cell into the next cell. So I want to resize my column width. So if you drag between your column names, A and B there, you get that little double-headed pointer. So again, your cursor is dynamic to where it resides in relation to various things. If I drag that to the right to give myself a little bit more space, you can resize columns in that manner. And I'm going to add $100,000. Now, when you add values, you don't want to add things like dollar signs, commas, and decimal places if you just have a decimal 00, for example, in most of your values. You can add that stuff via the number formatting. So I'll show you that in a minute. I'm just going to add all of these values. So I'm tabbing, and I'm going to add those up with a formula, which effectively is something called autosum, which we'll see. Butch Vig. So these are these salespeople's regional sales for these months. So we got the values in. I've got some text. I'm going to quickly show you a very, very quick formula. So to add a formula to do some arithmetic or math on a range of cells, I click where I want the formula to reside, and then I can just click equals. That starts off the formula. So a very simple way to add these up is to just click on B3, or you can type in B3 and then plus, that's your operator, and then click on C3 or type in C3 and then plus. This time I'll just type it in to show you I can type in D3. And it color codes those cell references as well as the cells in the spreadsheet to indicate what's actually being added up in the formula, so you know you're adding up the right things. So if I press enter, that adds those up, much like a calculator would. But we can actually quickly do this with one button. Since the thing we do most with values in Excel is add them up, there's actually a tool right here for that. You'll see this a little bigger if you have your screen full size. I have mine smaller so you can see what I'm doing a little better in this video. So if I click on that, and notice it says Alt plus equals will also give you the that formula. If I just click on that instead, it pops this equals sum, and then in brackets B3 to D3. This is known as a range or an array. So I'm going to press enter, and I'm going to also put a total down here, and I'll do the same thing here. So that's autosum. And notice that we have our little autofill. So if you autofill when you have a formula, it will increment the cell references. So the next one will be B or C3 to C7 if I drag to the right. The next one will be D3 to D7. So it'll increment the column names as I drag to the right. The row names, of course, remain the same in this situation. So I'm just going to drag that all the way across. And I'm actually going to drag it right into this empty one as well. And I'll do the same thing here. This time I'll drag down, so this will increment the row names as I drag down, or decrement if I drag up. So that's how we add text, values, and formulas to a spreadsheet. I'm going to quickly do a little bit of formatting just to finish off this video. So I want this title for this layout here to be centered across these 5 cells, which is basically the whole arrangement of my data. So if I select all of that there, those 5 cells, we have this button here called Merge and Center. So that makes those 5 cells into one big cell, and then centers the content in the middle. And we have the usual text formatting tools here. So I'm just going to make that bold. I'll make it a little bit bigger for a title. I'll make these italic. I'll center and bold the column names, my column names I should say, bold and center. And now if I actually print this, you'll see that these grid lines are not visible. I can take a look at what it would look like if I print it by choosing File, Print. It'll give me a preview. Notice there's no grid lines. So something that you want to add to your formatting quite a bit in Excel is cell borders. So I'm just going to go back and I'm going to add some cell borders. So I'll select this entire thing, and we have the borders right here in the font section. I'll say all borders for that. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of borders and shading in a future lesson. Now I want to format these so they look like currency. So one thing I like to do is I like to have the top row with a $sign, as well as decimal 00, and then all of the other rows without the $sign. I find that looks really clean, and then we have a clear indication that these values are all currency. So I'm going to select this top row, and then under the number here we have a bunch of preset formats. So currency will give you a $sign right next to the value, a comma between your thousand separators, and a comma as your thousand separators, I should say, and a decimal 00. Now we can also just format using individual tools as well. So if I just want to increase the decimal place, sorry, this one here, there we go, and I want to add a comma as well, so I'll click on my comma. So again, the top row has a $sign, everything else no $sign. And you can make these cells a little wider as well. Now if you want to resize the width of a bunch of cells at the same time, so all of these cells with numbers, I want them to be the same width. So I'm going to click and drag to select the entire column. This is all the way to the bottom of the spreadsheet when you click up in the column name. I'll select all of those, and then if I resize one, they'll all be that size. So I'll just make them a little bigger there, so you notice they're all that width now. So that's a little bit about number, text, and borders formatting, as well as adding values, text, and formulas. Thanks so much for watching.